Hey everybody, welcome to class. We're in Module 9, Chapter 9. We're going to learn about securing your system and making sure that your digital information is secure, which includes your identity. We want to make sure that your identity doesn't get stolen. And you're going to learn some really important things in this lecture. I'm going to cover those super important things right at the very beginning. These are them right here in this blue-green color. And these are things that aren't covered in the textbook. Some of the stuff like freezing your credit and the Fair Credit Billing Act. I didn't see that in this presentation that the textbook had put together, and nor did I see information about a password manager or two-factor authentication. And quite frankly, I'm pretty surprised that the textbook didn't include these concepts, these subjects, these topics in this module, this chapter's content that's presented in this presentation. Because this is some of the most important stuff that you could do. Some of the most important takeaways that you could get from this entire class is that you want to make sure that you protect yourself so that you don't get hacked or so that your identity doesn't get stolen. And if your identity gets stolen or if you get hacked, that could create a lot of trouble and hardship for you, and it can be very expensive and take a lot of your time. And so right here at the very beginning, you're going to learn how to protect yourself from that. So the first thing we're going to talk about is freezing your credit. And so if you go, like if we go to ChatGPT, so I'm going to go to ChatGPT, and I'm going to ask ChatGPT a new chat, and I'm going to say, what are the 3 credit bureaus in America, right? And it's going to tell us they're TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. And we're going to now ask it, what does it mean to freeze your credit, right? And so it will provide us with a definition. And freezing your credit basically means that with each of these credit bureaus, you're going to search for each of those credit bureaus, and you're going to search for this credit bureau, or this credit bureau, or this credit bureau, and you're going to search for freezing your credit at each of those credit bureaus. And they will have a web page. And these web pages aren't really publicly advertised, but when you go to that web page, by law, they are required to allow you to freeze your credit. What does that mean? It means you're going to set a password at that credit bureau. You're going to set a password, and you're going to say, my credit's frozen, and the only way it could be unfrozen is if I enter that password and say, for how long is it unfrozen? And what that does is that if somebody tries to steal your identity, they get your social security number, they get your name, they get your address, they get your date of birth, they get your mother's maiden name, they get all this information, and then they're going to go apply for credit. They're going to get a credit card or buy a car or get a short-term loan in your name, using your information, impersonating you, pretending they are you. The money will be sent to them. You'll be left with a debt. That's what happens when somebody steals your credit, But what's going to happen if your credit is frozen, these thieves who are trying to steal your identity will go and apply for a credit card, a car loan, or a short-term loan, and the lender will say, okay, we need to pull your credit, but your credit is frozen. Can you please unfreeze your credit? They will ask the thief that. The thief won't have the password to unfreeze your credit, so the lender won't be able to pull your credit, and then thus they won't be able to create a loan to this person who's trying to steal your identity. So it really protects you. When you freeze your credit, this is a big takeaway from this entire course. When you freeze your credit, it protects you from having your identity stolen. So let me just demonstrate how you do this. So I'm going to go to TransUnion, and I'm going to do credit freeze, TransUnion credit freeze. And I'll bring up my ChatGPT and I'll put it over here, and then I'll go to Experian. And this comes up because this is stuff that I have searched for before, because my credit's frozen, my kids' credit, I froze their credit, my wife's credit, it's frozen, my parents, I froze their credit. Everybody that's important to me and is immediately in my immediate family, we all have our credit frozen. And so you could freeze your credit here. You just click on this link, and at TransUnion, you go in and you say, I want to freeze my credit, and you create an account, freeze your credit, and then it's going to give you a password. You keep that password. And then over here, you do that for TransUnion. You do that for Experian. So here, come in, right? Create an account, create a freeze, get a password, keep it. And you do that at Equifax. So at TransUnion, you freeze your credit. At Experian, you freeze your credit. And at Equifax, you freeze your credit. By law, the credit bureaus have to offer this service for free, right? What do they do on their homepages? Often they try to sell you this service, right? And they don't tell you that, like here's the family plan for throwing $29 a month, right? Here's Premier for $20 a month. Here's Complete for $10 a month, right? And credit report lock, right? So they don't advertise these services. And other people will also sell you the service where they'll go freeze your credit for you, and it's identity protection, and they'll charge you so much a month. It's all free. It's all free. All you got to do is search for Equifax, freeze my credit, Experian, freeze my credit, TransUnion, freeze my credit, or Credit Freeze or whatever. Go in there, and then you could freeze your credit. Here you could pause the video, and you could read about the explanation that ChatGPT generated for what it means to freeze your credit. It's one of the most important things you could do to protect your financial health. I highly recommend that you do this, and that everybody that you love and is close to you, you recommend to them that they do it too. Because just the other day in the news, let me find this article, hold on. All right, so here are the articles, right? But like U.S. reaches 31.5 million settlement for T-Mobile over data breaches. Was my social security number stolen? Answers to common questions on the national public data breach. Massive data breach that includes social security numbers, maybe even worse than suspected. Biggest data breaches in 2024, 1 billion stolen records and rising. So basically you just have to assume that like all the information that people need to steal your identity, it's already been compromised. And the only way you can protect yourself is to freeze your credit. So the takeaway from that is you absolutely want to freeze your credit 100%. That's one of the main things you want to learn. Next thing we're going to learn is we're going to learn about password managers, okay? And so I got to make sure I don't actually bring up my passwords when I show you this, so give me 1 second. I'll be right back. Okay, so there are a variety of password managers that are out there, and you could Google different password managers, and you'll hear people talk about like, should you even use a password manager? Should you trust somebody? Trust somebody with all your passwords? Give some company access to all your passwords? Should you do that? You'll hear people talk about that. And you'll also hear people talk about, okay, if you're going to allow some company to store all your passwords, like, which company should you choose? Should it be LastPass? Should it be something else, right? Like Norton, which password manager should you use? That's the second question. And so, those are, okay, good questions. And I just want you to know that you could do your own research and choose whatever password manager you want to choose. The password manager I use is Google Password Manager. I've chosen to use a password manager, okay? I've chosen to use a password manager because I have like over 580 passwords. I want them to all be super strong, and I want them to all be different, and there's no other way I can manage them without a password manager. And so password manager keeps track of all those passwords. So I've chosen to use a password manager. The password manager I chose to use is Google Password Manager. I chose to use Google Password Manager because Google is like one of the top software engineering firms to have ever existed. And if I'm going to trust anybody with all of my passwords, keeping them secure, I'm going to trust the organization that I know has incredible software engineering. Okay, Google Password Manager, I don't know if they've ever had a breach. I've never heard about one. But I know a lot of other password managers have been compromised, and then they're like, oh, it's been fixed, it should never happen again. But I've never heard of that happening with Google Password Manager. So to use Google Password Manager, and I'm just going to like right click this here and open in an incognito window. But like you would sign in, you need a Google account. And then I think for me, the way I use it is I use it with Google Chrome. And inside Google Chrome, you could then add passwords. And when you have a form to fill out, you could right click and you could say, hey, generate a secure password. That option's not showing up here because this isn't a field that needs a secure password. But if I was like, oh, I have 859 passwords actually, right? And I've already looked at these. It'll tell you if you have compromised passwords so that they've found them somewhere out there in the world. And I have 11 compromised passwords. And I'll look at these again right here in a moment. I'm not going to show them to you. but I'll click on this and I'll look to see if those are any sites. They're usually like, you know, some site I'm never going to go to again, so I don't care. It's just like a throwaway. But I'll check those and then let you know here in a second. But you, what was I saying? You want to make sure you have a really good password manager, and then you could right click a field and you could right click and you choose generate, like where you have to have a password. You could right click it, you can say generate a strong secure password. By right clicking it, and it'll make a strong secure password. And then you can also add passwords manually. So when you go to the Google Password Manager page and you're signed in, there's a place where you could click add, and if it doesn't automatically while you're using Chrome keep track of your passwords for you, you could click it and you can log in and then you could add your password manually. Manually. So that's the next really important takeaway, is that you want to make sure that you use a password manager. So freeze your credit, and then also make sure you're using a password manager. And for me, after all the experience I've had, Google Password Manager is the one I use. And then you only have one point of contact, where it's like, you know, there's one password that you have to remember, and it's the password for your Google account. And with your password at your Google account, you want to make sure you set up two-factor authentication. And we'll talk about that in just a second, but first I'm going to check these to see if I have any compromised passwords. I'll be right back. All right, so I just looked at my compromised passwords, and there's a couple of things in there I'll probably update after this video is recorded, but that's like, you know, that's one of the benefits of Google Password Manager, is it shows you, you know, which passwords have been compromised, and helps you stay on top of keeping everything secure. So the next thing you want to do is you want to have two-factor authentication on important accounts, your bank accounts, your Google account. And so in these accounts, you can usually go to your user icon, click on your user icon, and then in here I'd go to manage my Google account, and in there I'd go to security. So there'd be like a security area, and then there I could set up two-factor authentication, and sometimes that's referred to 2FA. And two-factor authentication means that when I log in to Google with my password, Google is then going to text me a code. They're going to text me a code on my phone. And then I'll have to also enter the code that they texted me. Why is that important? So there's two factors there to authenticate me. The first factor was that I had to know my password. I had to log in. That's the first factor. The second factor was they text me a number, and I have to enter that number. That's the second factor used to authenticate me. There's two factors used to authenticate me, two-factor authentication. Somebody else could theoretically figure out my password or steal my password or somehow crack my password, brute force, or somehow my password's compromised. If that gets compromised and they try to log in, they would also have to have my phone, right, to get into my Google account, because Google's gonna send a code to my phone, and I'm gonna enter that code when I'm logging in, and that's what will authenticate me. And if somebody does not have my phone, they're not gonna be able to log into the account. So they need both those things, okay? So that's the next thing you want to do to protect your identity, keep all your stuff safe online, is you want to have two-factor authentication. So freeze your credit, use a password manager, my strong recommendation. And then also have two-factor authentication set up on all of your important accounts, hugely important. Last thing I'm going to tell you about is the Fair Credit Billing Act. And so if we go to ChatGPT, and we say, tell me about. I don't need this one, I don't need this one, I don't need this one, I don't need that one, I don't need that one, I don't need that one. Tell me about the Fair Credit Billing Act and how this protects consumers who use credit cards. There we go. And I should have put a please in. So the Fair Credit Billing Act is a federal law that was enacted to protect consumers from unfair billing practices and errors related to credit card use. It outlines specific procedures for disputing billing errors and limits consumer liability for unauthorized charges. Okay, so you could read here, like pause the video and you could read here, all right? And then you could also pause the video and you could read the rest of it. And basically what it says to you, what it tells us, is that if there's a charge made to your credit card, you're not, and it's not a charge you made, so if somebody used your credit card, you're not responsible for that. You just need to call your credit card, you need to dispute the charge, you need to tell them, hey, there's a charge on here, it's not mine, and then the credit card will cover that charge. You don't have to pay for it, or if there's multiple charges, they'll cover all those charges. By law, you don't have to pay for it, and then they'll probably cancel your card and issue you a new number, a new card with a new number, right? And so that way, whoever has your numbers, they won't be able to use them anymore. And so by law, really, you could have a liability that is a maximum of $50, but in practice, the credit card companies don't enforce that. All right, so that's the Fair Credit Billing Act. And this is important to know because if you use credit cards to do transactions, you are actually safer than if you're using cash. If you lose your credit card, you could call the credit card company and cancel it. And if somebody has used it in the interim, it's not your responsibility, right? But if you lose your cash, you're out of your cash. And so credit cards are actually a really secure way to shop. And as a consumer, you're protected. And so it's something I recommend is to use credit cards. Just make sure that you're keeping track of your charges. So you want to use some financial management software, such as QuickBooks. Okay, there's other ones out there. I use QuickBooks. And you can download all your transactions every day or a couple times a week, and you can look at them and you can see like, oh, you know, was this a charge I authorized? And, you know, or if it isn't, you could then contest it with your credit card company, and that way you won't be held responsible for it. So some people have fears of credit cards, but just make sure you pay them off every month and you don't go wild and charge more than you need, more than you could pay for. And then pay them off every month. And they're actually an incredibly useful tool to help you manage your life. All right, so those are the high level takeaways from keeping yourself safe at this level. There's a few other things that we're gonna learn about as we learn about securing your system, your life, protecting your digital data and your devices and your digital life and your identity. There's a few more things we're gonna learn about, but these are some of the most important ones. Definitely, I would stay tuned for the rest of this information. It's also useful. And now, like you want to learn about social engineering. It's good to learn about the different ways you could authenticate and stuff you should never share online. You want to learn about that. You want to learn about backups, and it's good to know about things you could do to protect your electronic devices from the environmental factors like heat and sun and power surges, and then also, what to do if you ever lose a device. You're gonna learn about that, and then we'll learn a little bit more about computer viruses. But those are the main things. Like it's for sure you should know about social engineering and phishing and stuff like that, which we're gonna take a look at. So now we're gonna just go through things from the start to the finish, and so we're gonna look at each of the bullet points here. I'm gonna talk about them. We're gonna use ChatGPT to explore them a little bit. And then after we do that, we'll go through these individual slides right there, okay? You game? You ready? Let's do it. All right, so the first one, describe how identity theft is committed and the types of scams identity thieves perpetrate. I think it's kind of fun just to copy this stuff and bring it over here to ChatGPT and put it in there, but I'm gonna be polite with ChatGPT and say, please describe how identity theft is committed and the types of scams identity thieves perpetrate. I'm interested to see what it comes up with. And again, ChatGPT is like a synthesis of all of the information that's out there. So it's looked at all the information that's out there and it's synthesizing it into this response. And so it's giving us information here which might not be covered in the book and might not otherwise be covered by me. So it's really kind of like giving us a full treatment of that. And we'll look through this here, just starting right at the very beginning. So identity theft occurs when someone unlawfully obtains and uses another person's personal information, right? So they're stealing your identity. They're saying they're you. They're saying they're you, and they're pretending they're you, and they're like, and this is my social security number, and they're using your social security number, right? And your credit card details, your bank account information. They're trying to just go be like you and take all of your money and get loans in your name and then just use it and disappear, right? So that's stealing your identity. And it's typically for financial gain or to commit fraud. Identity thieves can commit this crime in several ways, often through sophisticated scams. Here's how identity theft is commonly carried out and the types of scams involved. Phishing. Okay, so phishing is when they send you an email trying to get information from you. So scammers send emails or text messages text messages that appear to be from legitimate companies, such as banks or online services, tricking individuals into providing personal information, passwords, social security numbers, credit card details. So you might get an email that looks like it's from your bank that says, hey, we're having some issues and we need you to click this link in this email or in this text message, click this link, and we need you to verify your information and put in your username and password, right? And then when you do that, you've actually sent them your username and password. Or they'll be like, enter your social security number or enter your credit card so that we can confirm it's your identity. So anytime, a good rule of thumb is that when you get an email or a text message and it's like, and usually they're like, urgent, do this now. Otherwise you might, it looks like your account's been breached. We need you to respond now, right? When you get those emails or text messages, never click the link. Never click the link. So if I got a link and let's just say, I don't know, I'm at Wells Fargo and I don't bank at Wells Fargo, but let's say, I don't even know if it exists anymore. But let's say I did bank at Wells Fargo and an email came in saying, click this link, go right now to Wells Fargo and change your password. And to change your password, please enter your username and ID, your username and current password to change it, right? But let's say I got an email or text message from Wells Fargo, my account's been compromised. Please go change it now. Click this link. I would not click the link in the email or the text message. That's the most important thing. Instead, I would just directly go to Wells Fargo and I wouldn't try to type in Wells Fargo domain like this, because what if I made a mistake and I left out the O and it was Wells Fargo, right? I left out the R, and then I went there and it's like a spoof site set up to look like Wells Fargo for people who mistype it, and that's how they're capturing passwords. So I Google Wells Fargo. Google will send me the official link for Wells Fargo. I then click on that, and now I can log into my account and I can see if everything's okay, right? And what I did not do is I did not click the link that was in the email or the text message. Got it? Don't click the links in emails or text messages. Go directly to Google and then directly Google the place you want to go, and then click that link to go to that place that Google gave you in the search results, because that's a legitimate link. Next thing, skimming. Identity thieves use devices called skimmers to capture information from credit card or debit card magnetic strips when individuals swipe their cards at ATMs, gas stations, or payment terminals. The stolen data can be used to create fake cards or make unauthorized purchases. So if this were to happen, given what you have already learned about the Fair Credit Billing Act, would you be responsible? Here's my question for you. Would you be responsible for unauthorized purchases on your credit card? The answer is no. You would not be responsible for unauthorized purchases on your credit card. But what you do want to do is make sure you're looking at your credit card transactions at least once or twice a week, right? So that, sooner rather than later, you can let your credit card company know, hey, somebody is like making charges and they aren't mine. We need to cancel this card. We need to credit me for those charges, and you guys need to send me a new card. Skimming device, right? So we Google a skimming device and we look at images. You can see like people will put on devices on top of devices that are an extra layer of readers. And so here, right, this is like maybe a little bit wider than that one. I guess that looks suspicious. And here some device has been put on top of that device. And so you just want to see, so there's one being put on top of another one. So if it ever looks like, this looks like a device has been put on top of a device, just don't use it, And so that's how those skimming devices work. But it's kind of ingenious what thieves have come up with. Data breaches, all right? So hackers can infiltrate databases of companies, government agencies, or online services, stealing personal information on a large scale. Stolen data is often sold on the dark web. So the dark web is like the web, but for dark purposes, and used by criminals to commit identity theft. And to get onto the dark web or the dark net, you use like a Tor browser, and dark web is for like criminal activity and everything that wouldn't normally exist on the normal web. And like a Tor browser is a way for thieves to kind of obscure their identity and make it so that they can't be tracked. And so that's where they like buy and sell things, which like, you know, online stolen personal information or other things which are illegal. That's where all that happens on the dark web. And it's kind of an interesting thing to learn about. So if you go to YouTube and you just search for like TED Talk dark web, and I'm just going to do that. Hold on one second. All right, cool. So here's the some TED Talks on the dark web, how the mysterious dark net is going mainstream. Why not just get rid of the dark web? That one's 1 year ago. That might be interesting to look at. And then also, like, I think 60 Minutes Silk Road. I think they have an interesting one about that. The dark road, Silk Web, ghost cities. Hold on, let me find something on Silk Road. Hold on. So I'm just looking through the results here. And so I searched for Silk Road, and then I just read through them. And this one, Silk Road documentary, the BBC, British Broadcast Corporation, I think is what that stands for, is a pretty reputable place. The prehistoric origins of the Silk Road, Dread Pirate documentary. And so we'll do that one here, and Dread Pirate Roberts, Silk Road documentary, we'll see that. So anyhow, one of these could be interesting to watch. So he was somebody who ran a website on, his name was Ross Ulbricht. He ran a website on the dark web where he was making billions of dollars, basically being an Amazon, selling everything that was illegal. And now he's in jail for the rest of his life. So the FBI took him down. And he got taken down partly, interesting story, partly because his partner, he ordered a hit on his partner, and the FBI went to his partner and said, hey, we've been hired by your business partner to kill you. But we tell you what, if you let us fake your death, we will go lighter on you with the sentencing, and you help us catch Ross Ulbricht. And so the partner said, okay, that's good. And so the FBI messaged Ross Ulbricht, and they said, all right, we're going to kill him. Do you want us to torture him also? And Ross Ulbricht said yes. And I think, I don't know how, but the idea that pictures would be sent showing that this was documented, that he was tortured. And so the FBI hired Hollywood makeup artists to make his partner look like he was increasingly being tortured and increasingly gruesome. And they took pictures of that, and then they sent it to Ross Ulbricht, and they said, okay, we've tortured him, and now he's dead. And Ross Ulbricht paid them. That's just like an outlandish story. Like, we gotta verify that. And I'm going to just say, regarding the Silk Road on the dark web, e.g. dark web, darknet, and is that also called the dark web? Did Ross Ulbricht hire the FBI to carry out a hit on Ross's business partner? And did Ross also hire the FBI posing as hitmen to carry out a hit on? And did Ross also authorize the FBI posing as hitmen to torture his business partner before killing him? That's why they call it the dark web. It's dark. Super dark. The Silk Road was a notorious online black market that operated on the dark web, where users could buy and sell illegal goods, including drugs, and using cryptocurrency like Bitcoin. Ross, under the pseudonym Dread Pirate Roberts, was the founder and operator of Silk Road. The dark net refers to the overlay network that can be accessed using specific software like Tor, and it's a part of the dark web, which encompasses sites not indexed by search engines. Got it. Allegations against Ross and the FBI. Ross was accused of commissioning murder-for-hire plots as part of his efforts to protect the Silk Road, maintain control. The specific claim you're referring to involves an alleged attempt by Ulbricht to hire hitmen to kill one of his business associates who Ulbricht believed was a threat. Hiring of hitmen. Ulbricht was accused of paying what he believed to be hitmen to carry out murder, but these hitmen were actually undercover FBI agents. In his alleged plot, Ulbricht reportedly ordered the killing of employees who had been arrested and who he believed might turn against him. The FBI intercepted the communications, set up a sting operation. There was an additional claim that Ulbricht, during these communications, authorized the hitmen, undercover agents, to torture the target before killing him. This is reportedly part of an attempt to extract information and ensure that no sensitive details were compromised. However, no actual killing or torture took place. The FBI was running an operation to gather evidence against Ulbricht, and while these murder for hire allegations were part of the case, they were never fully substantiated in court because no murders occurred. And so here's the legal outcome. He was not formally charged with murder or attempted murder. Illustrates his willingness to resort to violence to protect his enterprise. Ulbricht was convicted on a number of other charges, including conspiracy to traffic narcotics, computer hacking, and money laundering, which led to 2 life sentences, not just 1, but 2. You're dead, start over. If he gets reincarnated, he goes right back to jail. 2 life sentences, that's sad. It's sad. I'm laughing, but this is like somebody's life, and they made bad decisions out of greed because they never learned better, and went down really hard for it. The murder for hire allegations remain a controversial part of the case, with some arguing that they were not sufficiently proven or exaggerated as part of the broader effort to secure conviction. However, the core of Ulbricht's conviction focused on his role running the Silk Road, enabling a massive illegal drug trade on the dark web. The darknet and dark web are often used interchangeably, those terms, though technically the darknet refers to the network of sites accessible only through specific software like Tor, that's the darknet, while the dark web refers to the websites themselves. So the network is here and the web runs on top of the network. Just like we have the internet, the network, and the web, the World Wide Web runs on top of the network, the internet. You have the dark net, and on top of the dark net, you have the dark web running on top of it. So the Silk Road was part of the dark web, access through the dark net. Amazing, all the information that's online. So, right, we're learning about identity theft and types of scams that identity thieves perpetrate. And the scam we learned about was we learned about credit card fraud, bank loan fraud, tax-related identity theft, types of scams up here. Phishing. So these phishing, scamming, data breaches. There's also dumpster diving. So people look through trash to get sensitive information to try to steal people's identities. But with all these data breaches, and if criminals can just buy that data online, I don't know why they'd still go jump in dumpsters, but still a good idea to shred sensitive documents. Mail theft, people will look through your mail to get sensitive information about you. Like how often does it happen? I don't know. I've never heard of that happening in my adult life, right? That somebody had their mail stolen, but how would you know? I don't know. Phone scams. Scammers impersonate representatives from reputable organizations. This is known as social engineering. And they call individuals to solicit personal information under the guise of fixing a problem or confirming account details. Hi, Janice. My name is Bob. I'm calling from Microsoft. Janice, we noticed some funny activity with your computer, and I want to help you fix it. I don't want you to fall prey to the different kinds of viruses and threats that are out there. Do you have 5 minutes so I could help you fix your computer, Janice? Who are you? I'm Bob from Microsoft. Are you near your computer right now, Janice? Yeah, my computer's on. Great. Can you go to your computer and sit down for me? And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to log in. Please tell me when you're logged in and I can help you get this fixed, right? And now the person, Bob, in this scenario, is going to direct Janice to go to some website where she could download a piece of software which is going to fix her computer and allow the hackers to actually gain all access to all of her information. So, you can't believe anything anymore. If you see a picture online, you can't believe it's true. If you see video online, you can't believe, it's real video, that it's a video of something that really happened. Like all that stuff can be fabricated. And if somebody calls you and tells you they're from Microsoft or tells you they're from your bank, you can't believe that either. If they call you and they're from the IRS or whatever, right? You just say, okay, sounds good. What's your name? What's your number? And do you have an employee ID or something? Thanks very much. And I'm going to call the company directly. If you're a criminal or a thief, you should go back to school. You should get a master's degree. And you'll find much better employment. And so anyhow, a lot of times these things are originating actually out of like They originate out of desperate areas of the world where there's not economic prosperity, but there are a lot of economic challenges, and desperate people do desperate things. And so this isn't to say that there are good people or bad people. There are people who are fortunate, and there are people who are less fortunate. And less fortunate people are desperate. I don't know why I keep highlighting that. Less fortunate people are more desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. But if they'd had access to the same education that you are receiving right now, if they'd had the ability to earn their degrees, if they had been born into a country with greater economic prosperity and with better educational opportunities, if they had had good parents who had raised them more effectively, if they'd had all that good fortune, they would not be in such desperate situations, such desperate circumstances, doing such desperate things. And so this is to take us away from this perspective of being good people, bad people, and to bring us to a more realistic and kind and empathetic perspective of fortunate versus unfortunate people. And for those who are less fortunate, it's our responsibility as those who are more fortunate, who were given who did have better parenting, who did have better educational opportunities, who did have better economic circumstances, a better economy around them. It's our responsibility as those who are more fortunate to be able to take care of the less fortunate in the world. And so, I was a little bit glib when I was like, you should get your master's degree. I was a little bit glib, but what would be good is like, hey, do you know about the University of the People? Right? The University of the People offers an American University of the People, offers an accredited American degree for free to anybody in the world. It was started by New York University, University of Edinburgh, McGill University, a couple of others, and anybody in the world can go there and forward their education for exactly this purpose, right? So that they have better opportunities. So anyhow, phone scams. That's phone scams and social engineering. Public Wi-Fi hacking. Thieves use unsecured public Wi-Fi networks to intercept personal information transmitted online, such as login credentials or financial data. So we could come down here and we can say, how do I know if if a Wi-Fi network is unsecured? Does that mean it doesn't require a password to log in? And how do thieves access personal information and information transmitted on unsecured public Wi-Fi? Is this the thing where my browser, my computer has saved the login info for, let's say, the Wi-Fi hotspot, Starbucks, and then a thief sets up another Wi-Fi hotspot somewhere with that SSID, Starbucks, and my computer then automatically connects to it. Can you please speak to all of that? Interesting questions. Identifying an unsecured Wi-Fi network typically does not require a password to connect. When you attempt to join such a network, you won't be prompted for any authentication like WPA2 or PA3. Additionally, when connecting to an unsecured network, you may receive a warning on your device that the connection is not secure. Unsecured networks are common in public places like coffee shops, libraries, or airports. These networks are open to anyone, meaning data transmitted over them is vulnerable to interception by others. And so we'll have a follow-up question here. How thieves access personal information on unsecured public Wi-Fi. Man-in-the-middle attack. A hacker intercepts the communication between your device and the Wi-Fi router. This can allow them to see sensitive information such as this and that if it's not encrypted. This is more likely to happen on unsecured networks because data isn't automatically encrypted. Packet sniffing. Use special software hackers can monitor sniff data packets that are sent over unsecured networks. Fake hotspots, evil twin attack. This scenario you mentioned, thieves set up a rogue Wi-Fi hotspot And if your computer or smartphone is set to automatically connect to saved networks, it may connect to the rogue hotspot without your knowledge. And there's more about that. Wi-Fi Pineapple, that's kind of fun. This is a portable device that hackers use to impersonate legitimate Wi-Fi networks, can trick your device into connecting to it instead of a genuine network. Once connected, the hacker can monitor and manipulate the data being transmitted. How to protect yourself. Use a VPN. So we'll learn about VPNs. VPN encrypts your internet traffic, making it difficult for hackers to intercept. Disable. After reading this, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start using a VPN. Disable automatic Wi-Fi connections. So you won't automatically connect to just a spot just because you're near it. Verify network legitimacy. So there's that. Avoid transmitting sensitive information. Use HTTPS, which is required for all websites now. And so that means communication between your browser and the website's all encrypted. And turn off sharing. Disable file sharing. So I think using a VPN is the most important thing you could do. And NordVPN, I recommend NordVPN. I also like Proton VPN, and you could check both those out online. So here's NordVPN, and that's what that looks like. And also Proton VPN, I used them for a while, and so that's there. So that's a good way to keep yourself safe, is using a VPN, and that's some good information about, this bit right here, which was right here, public Wi-Fi hacking, and then social media exploitation. So identity thieves could gather information about you from social media, and pet names, family members' names, birth dates, and then they could start to hack your identity, steal your identity with that stuff. I'm going to look through this stuff here real quick and see if there's anything interesting to talk about there. So this is just a little bit more about the different types of identity theft, and you can pause the video and you could read through that. And you could read through that. And then here's how to prevent identity theft. 1, freeze your credit. 2, shred sensitive documents. 3, avoid sharing personal info in those ways. Use strong passwords. Monitor your credit. And freeze your credit, and enable 2-factor authentication. So those are all really important things to do, and that's all super good information. And I can't believe we've talked for 40 minutes, and all we've done is this. And this first point, we're going to speed things up. But this was all really important, and we learned some good stuff. So describe the different types of hackers and the tools they use. So we categorize hackers as good hackers, bad hackers. You could also put them into the fortunate and less fortunate category. That's a better place to think of them. But just generally speaking, like, what are their actions? There are good actions and bad actions that hackers take. So if you're taking bad actions, you're actually trying to do things for bad purposes, and you're called a black hat. Black hat, like you wear a hat. Black hat hacker, and you're like, in the cowboy movies, you're the person wearing black. And then there are white hat hackers, and those are people who are hacking for good purposes. So for instance, maybe a company hires a white hat hacker to try to hack the company to let them know if they have any security vulnerabilities, right? So that'd be a white hat hacker. And there's different tools that hackers use. We'll see a few of those when we get to the slide. A computer virus is just like you can get a virus in the real world and get like the flu or something like that. A computer can get a virus, though with computer viruses, it's the reason they're called viruses is that they can be exchanged from computer to computer, just like with humans, viruses can be exchanged from human to human. But a computer virus isn't like a bacterial thing. It's software. It's just software that is like has malicious purposes. So it's sometimes called malware, right? It's malicious software, malware, and it's just software that has some malicious purpose, sometimes called malware. And it's a threat to your security because, a lot of times computer viruses can be used to gather information about you or to exploit you, or like one of the computer viruses is like ransomware. So ransomware is like, ransomware where they, lock up your system and they say, hey, if you want all your stuff unlocked, you need to send us some Bitcoin. And so they'll lock up, like they've locked up the computer systems for casinos, an entire casino, or for colleges, schools, or for hospitals. And it's like, you want all this unlocked, send us $10 million in Bitcoin. And here's where you send it. And then they send it, and sometimes those thieves unlock the computers, or sometimes they're just like, they just go away with the money. And so that's a computer, and a virus can also be transmitted from computer to computer. We used to move files with disks or with flash drives. Now we send files to each other. So if somebody sends you a file and you open it, there is a possibility that you could get a virus depending upon the file. So if it's like a Word document and it has some macro recorded in the Word document, Microsoft Word will ask you, do you want to enable this script or do you want to enable this macro? And you should always say no if somebody sent that to you over the web. But if you're ever in doubt, you could say, if somebody sends me a JPEG image, can that give my computer a virus? And so we'll just see what it has to say about that. Typically harmless and commonly used for sharing photos, there are certain circumstances where opening an image could potentially compromise your computer security. Here's what you should know, right? And so, there could be, some problems. And so how do you protect yourself? Keep software up to date. Ensure your image viewing software, web browser, and operating systems are up to date. Latest security patches. Protect against vulnerabilities that could be exploited by malicious images. Use reliable antivirus software. Good antivirus program can scan files, including images, for malicious content before you open them. Most modern antivirus programs automatically detect and block suspicious files. And check file extensions. So make sure it's not like photo.jpeg.exe, right? So an exe is an extension for executable. And you wouldn't want to run an executable. An executable is an executable program. So when you run this, it's going to run an executable program. It's going to run code on your computer, like you are running software on your computer that somebody sent you, and that software can do anything. So if you execute an executable, you're like running software somebody sent you that can do anything on your computer. Avoid downloading attachments from unknown sources, and don't download from untrusted links. And you can ask, does Microsoft Windows come with default antivirus software? And so we'll see what it has to say about that. Yes, Windows comes with built-in antivirus software called Windows Security. What about Mac OS? What about Mac OS? For most users, Windows Security provides sufficient protection as long as they keep their system and security software updated, okay? What about Mac OS? Includes several built-in security features, protects against malware, but does not come with dedicated antivirus software the same way Windows does. Key built-in security features of Mac OS. And instead, Mac OS relies on multiple layers of protection to safeguard users from malware and other threats. So it has this different stuff. Does Mac OS need third-party antivirus? While Mac OS is less targeted by malware compared to Windows, it is not immune to threats. Here are some considerations. And so some Mac OS users opt for third-party antivirus software to add an extra layer of protection. So a lot of times people on Macs, Windows comes with it, and Macs, pretty much Apple and Microsoft don't want people using their computers and getting viruses. So they build their software to prevent that from happening. So it's pretty good out of the box, which is why I haven't really heard about the last 10, 15 years third-party antivirus software. And then the other question I wanted to ask is what about a PDF? What about a PDF? If someone sends me a PDF, can that give me a virus? Okay, give my computer a virus. See what it says about that. Yes, a PDF can infect your computer with malware, but this typically happens under specific circumstances. PDF files themselves are not inherently harmful, but they can be weaponized to exploit vulnerabilities, and PDF readers or contain embedded malicious code. Exploiting vulnerabilities in PDF readers, embedded JavaScript that can be used to automate certain functions. Malicious actors can embed JavaScript to execute harmful. JavaScript's a programming language, so it's code, such as downloading and running malware. Most modern PDF readers either block or limit the execution of JavaScript, but if this setting is disabled, you could be at risk. Embedded malicious links. A PDF might include links to malicious websites. So if you click the link, it'll take you to a bad website. Embedded files. PDFs can also contain embedded files, including executable files if you open or interact with these embedded files, you can unintentionally install malware in your system. And you can pause video and you could read through that. So the next one we're going to talk about is what about an MS Word document. We'll see what it has to say about that. I got to open the window. I'll be right back. It's actually hot outside. I'm going to turn on the AC. Hold on. All right, AC is going. Okay, so with Word documents, if there's a macro, that's code that could be right in there. And so, you know, there's a lot here to kind of think about, but you can pause the video, you could read about that, and you could also pause the video and you could read about that. And then basically you just kind of want to just trust stuff from people you know, but even when you get it from people you know, you want to be careful about it. And you can also always upload things into Google Drive. And so Google Drive is, let me just find it and I'll show it to you. All right, so Google Drive's right here, and you can upload things to Google Drive, and then Google Drive scans things that go through Google Drive for viruses. And it's by Google, so it's good software engineering. But that's good stuff to know there. So we talked about computer virus, malware, ransomware, and you know it's threats to your security because they could compromise everything about your computer and gain access to everything on your computer, and you might not even know it. And how a computing device catches a virus, right? You send files and you click links and install stuff you didn't mean to. And so sometimes there's Trojan horse software. And so here's a picture of Trojan horse. And it's like, oh, I'm going to install this little program. It's really going to help. And you don't know where it came from, or you know it didn't come from a trusted source, and you install it and it does one thing on the surface, but in the background it's actually malicious and does something else. So you might be like, this program helps me do whatever, record videos, right? But it like this records videos, but it isn't, you know, something that you vetted is a safe source to get software from. And because of that, you might have installed a Trojan horse, meaning it looks like it's recording software and it does do that. But when you installed it, it also gave backdoor access to your computer, right? So that's a Trojan horse. And there's different categories of computer viruses and describe their behaviors. Explain what spam is. So spam is just junk email and just being sent to everybody. And then cookies are anytime I go to a website, like, you know, if I went to, I don't know, LinkedIn Learning or LinkedIn, let's go to LinkedIn. Here at LinkedIn, like it stores little files with information on onto my computer. And you can see these if you go up here and you say, hey, cookies and site data. And so manage on-device site data. I could click on this and I could delete all those cookies. And then when I came back, it'd just write them. But they're just little storage files that websites use to help keep track of who you are and what you're doing. And it could compromise your privacy some because it, you know, plays into marketing, and marketing wants to know everything about you so that they could send you ads which are going to be compelling to you. But that's what cookies are. Websites put little files, little text files on your computer that store information. Describe social engineering techniques and explain strategies to avoid falling prey to them. So we talked about that with my Bob and Janice example. And when somebody calls you, just never give them any information, get their information. And if they say they're from Microsoft, then, or if they say they're from your bank, hang up with that person and then go directly to your bank and call your bank directly and talk to them. You call them, don't have them call you. A firewall is in computers, protects some environment from things outside that environment. So in China, the great firewall of China, right? I don't know if there's an image for this. There's the Great Wall of China, right? But there's also a firewall in China. And so this firewall in China, any connection to the internet outside of China, right? They have that go through a computer, like right here. And so here's I don't know, here's like inside China. And then like here's Gmail trying to get into China, and any of the computer lines that come into China, right? Any of the computer lines that come into China, they block them. They block certain stuff. They all go through computers that are running software that's monitoring all this traffic. And if somebody tries to bring Gmail into China, China's firewall says Gmail can't come in. And so it blocks Gmail and Google from coming in. Because China used to allow Google to be there, and Google and other sites, Facebook and like all that stuff, right? Because China wants to protect its culture, and China wants its own social media platform so it could track its people and have information about its people. It doesn't want them using like social media sites from America, because then Americans are gaining data and information about the Chinese. So China created its own social media sites to gain all this information about its own people. And then China also created, I believe they created TikTok. So did China create TikTok? Did China create TikTok? And we'll see what it says. Yes, TikTok was created by ByteDance, a Chinese company. Okay? And so they created that so that they could get information and data about Americans. It's part of the reason. And also, you know, the people who created it made a ton of money. But it serves a secondary purpose of giving Chinese information into Americans, right? And they could use that. And so here you can see these companies are being blocked from getting in China. There's another one. And so back in the day, Google, in the early days of the web, Google Tiananmen Square, early days of Google, early days of the web, Google was, you could access it in China, but Google would also allow you to search and learn about Tiananmen Square, which was an event where, you know, the Chinese government was rolling a whole bunch of stuff into Tiananmen Square, and there's protests, and they're bringing in the military to shut the protests down. And then this one guy carrying his groceries home said this is not acceptable, and he just stood in front of the tanks, and the tanks stopped. And so this image became world renowned, and so this was in 1989. And then China said, we want you to not show anything about Tiananmen Square. They said that to Google. And Google said, no, we're going to keep showing stuff about Tiananmen Square. And so then China's like, fine, you can't be in China. And they kicked Google out of China. So that's firewalls. How to protect your computer from viruses. We talked about that. We talked about passwords and password manager and biometric. We haven't talked about that. So you secure systems in 3 ways: who you are, what you know, and what you have. So who you are is like biometrics, my voice, my thumbprint, fingerprints, my retinal scan. It's who I am. Biometrics, biology, metric, measure, biometric. And what you know is like passwords. Okay, so we can authenticate secure device by who somebody is, biometrics, what they know, some password, and what they have. Maybe they have a credit card, right? And we have to scan the chip on there. And or you have the car key so you can unlock the car door. And so those are the ways you secure things: who you are, what you know, and what you have. Describe ways to surf the web anonymously. So at a very basic level, there's incognito. So you could go to new incognito window right here. So there's new incognito window. And then you could pause the video and you could read about this right here, right? And so this prevents some people from knowing things about you. Another way you could be a little bit more anonymous is to have a VPN, and that protects your privacy. And then there's additional ways to be more anonymous, which if you are that interested in that, you can figure that out on your own. And I say that again a little bit glibly because usually the people who need that higher level of security are maybe up to something they shouldn't be up to. And so that's why I say it like that. And describe the types of information you should never share online. Personal information, right? Social security number, driver's license, you know, mother's maiden name, birth date. And you should even think about your online reputation, something I haven't done that great of a job with because, you know, I really think I'm a creative person, and I'm a creator, right? I'm a creator. I always have been since I was young. I loved creating documentaries, and I did well with that. And I went to UCLA Film and Television. I went to UCLA to study at the Film and Television School, and then I just created a bunch of videos. And so there's a lot of information out there about me. But if you put a lot of information out there about yourself, it can negatively impact you. Some people will look at it and be like, that's not my type of person, right? I'm a certain type of person, and I'm not for everybody, right? And that's okay. You know, but if I'm applying somewhere, like to get into school, or like when you are looking for a job, your employer might look at that and be like, let's not hire that person. They got some weird content online, and it can come back and negatively impact you. So think about what you share online. List various types of backups. So you basically want anything that's important to be stored on like Google Drive or on Microsoft OneDrive. And that way, if your computer ever gets stolen or destroyed, all your important stuff can be accessed on the cloud somewhere. So that's backing all your stuff up. Negative effects of environment and power surges. So you don't want your computers to get too hot or to be in the sun. And humidity can also be bad for computers. So in California, we live in a pretty dry climate, at least in Central California. So that's good for computers. But then that could also create static electricity. So if you ever open your computer, you just want to be careful that you don't touch stuff and spark, because that spark could damage the hardware. And then you just want to, you know, protect it from, don't get it wet and things like that. If you ever do get a device wet, turn it off immediately and then let it dry for an extended period of time. Like, you know, 3 days in a hot car, maybe. I don't know. Fine line there between leaving it. You don't want it in the sun, but like 100 degrees hot car, or 100 degrees for 3 days. If you got something wet, that might help. Power surges. So power can be too much or too little or just right. And you can get surge protectors to block when too much a surge comes through. And you could get UPS, universal power supplies, or battery backups to provide power if there's too little power that comes through. And the computer wants a specific amount of power. Generally speaking, though, they're built today where if you just plug it into the wall, you're going to be probably fine. That said, I still use a surge protector. And it's probably a good idea for $20 just to use a surge protector. Describe major concerns when a device is stolen. You just want to be able to some way log in and delete everything on your device. So figure out how to do that with whatever phone or whatever you're using, and make sure it's all password protected, so whoever steals it can't just instantly get in, but they have to crack into it. It's good to think about. There's a lot to think about, right? There's a lot to think about. So that's this chapter. Those are all the main points. We'll now fly through these here and see what they are. So let's do that. So cybercrime is crime online, cyberspace. The web was once referred to as cyberspace. You don't really hear that anymore, but you do still hear cybercrime, which is crime on the internet or crime on the web. And there's, you know, a little graphic you could pause the video and look at right there. And identity theft, we talked about this, and we talked about all these things and the importance of freezing your credit. And white hat, black hat, and you could ChatGPT gray hat hackers. Maybe they're good sometimes, bad other times. And we could put this in. I'm kind of curious, actually. And regarding the below, what is a gray hat hacker? Someone who falls between white hat and black hat. Gray hat hackers typically don't have malicious intent, but they also don't always follow the legal or ethical guidelines of white hat hackers. Okay. Then we have Trojan horses. We talked about that. And zombies and DDoS. Distributed denial of service is when like software has been installed, viruses have been installed on many different computers. And those computers then become zombies for some hacker who controls them. And so that hacker could then tell those millions and millions of computers, at this time, I want you to start repeatedly making requests to Amazon. And then so many requests will come into Amazon's web server that legitimate requests trying to get to Amazon's web server or whatever, the government or whatever, will get a denial of service. Like, you can't get through, our servers are too busy. And that's known as a distributed denial of service attack, DDoS. So, and it uses a botnet, which is a large group of devices that have been infected by software programs, or they might also be referred to as zombies, which are computers a hacker controls. Exploit kits are software that runs on servers looking for vulnerabilities. One time I met a kid in junior high and he's like, hey, look at this. and he opens his laptop and he shows me how he's getting into, and it was like it was one of America's top 100 companies, and he's like hacking into the back because he was using an exploit kit which had found a vulnerability. I'm like, this is not legal. You know, like you can get in trouble for this. He's like, I know, the FBI already came and talked to me. If I go past this point, I get in trouble. I was like, wow, that's interesting. So he'd already been talked to by the FBI. A virus, we talked about viruses, and here's just a graphic depiction of a virus. And different types of viruses, you could pause the video and you could read about them there. And a little bit more about some information about different viruses. You could pause the video and read that. And then we talked about malware. Spyware spies on you, and you know, spies on you, that's it. And adware is just software that runs ads. It's not all that malicious, but it just bugs you with ads. Spam, we talked about that. And cookies, we talked about that, but you can pause the video here and you can read about it. And social engineering, we talked about that. And you can read about pretexting real short, pause the video. And phishing and farming, we talked about phishing and farming is, you know, what it says right there. And then we talked about ransomware and scareware, right? Like your computer's broken, click here to fix it. Firewall, we talked about that. And there's another picture of a firewall, and then a little bit more information about firewalls there. We talked about antivirus software, and then a little bit about how antivirus software works. You can pause the video and read that. And drive-by download, Wi-Fi stuff. Strong passwords. There's a little bit of information about creating strong passwords, and then biometric authentication, a little bit of information about that. You can pause the video there. And privacy tools and virtual private networks. Pause the video and read those things. And then, you know, here's that information I said. I sometimes wonder if, like, the people who make this textbook actually watch my lectures, because I'll start talking about stuff, and then like 2 versions later in the textbook, it shows up in their book. That sound like the likelihood of that occurring just is really low. But also, like, it's happened so many times. Maybe, you know, I guess it's just like they're tuning into what the field is already tuned into, and I'm part of that field. That's what it is. A little bit more there. Pause the video, read that, and then backups, and then a little bit more here on these things. So backing up stuff, you can pause the video. And power surges and UPS, we talked about that, and then. There you go. 3 main security concerns with devices: keeping them secure from being stolen, keeping data secure in case they are stolen, and finding a device if it's stolen. I'm out. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this and you gained some good information. The main takeaways are right here. Okay, those are the main takeaways, and that's super important stuff. See you next time.